how do you see this? Which kind of industry would be most likely participating on the metaverse from an industrial point of
view?
So
it's very simple. So basically, so the first thing is forget metaverse for a minute, okay? Because metaverse is like a religion. It's not going to be a thing until enough people actually believe in this thing. Okay, a metaverse is very different to what you offer a business. So when you look at metaverse is a technology, okay? It's AR, VR, it's immersive experiences, and it's interoperability across different ecosystems. That's what it is. And so to answer your question, it's where is this technology going to add value into a market segment that's growing, okay? So for us, you look at the market segments that are growing. So gaming is growing, okay? Gaming is a $200 billion industry. It will go to $300 billion. And the part that will contribute most to that growth in gaming is mobile, okay? So of the growth in gaming, 40% is mobile. That will grow year upon year, okay? So metaverse is AR. Mobile helps with AR, okay? And I think AR technology will be the thing that pushes metaverse forward, because you don't have to walk around with visors. You have one foot in the physical world, you hold your phone up and you're in the metaverse. It's augmented reality. So gaming for sure. Everyone's been talking about gaming, but everyone forgets fashion, okay? The fashion industry is 10x bigger than the gaming industry. It's 2.5 trillion, it will go to 3.5 trillion, okay? And where's the growth in fashion going to come from? It's going to come from, one, e-commerce, okay? It's going to come from 2, emerging markets, and it's going to come from 3, innovation. And premium fashion brands, Dior first only had an e-commerce website 5 years ago. That was the first time they first bridged e-commerce. And the next stage will be metaverse. Okay, will be being able to interact with your stores and in a 3D digital environment where you won't have to go in store. Okay, so it's about looking at the market segments that's growing and how this technology can add to that. And so all of these premium fashion brands now, Balmain, Givenchy, Louis Vuitton, they're all starting to explore with NFTs, okay, but they don't know what to do with these NFTs, and the NFTs will eventually lead to metaverse, because this is how you add utility to these things. So this is what we're focusing on, okay? It's sports, I think it's a no-brainer, and it's fashion, it's a no-brainer.
So we had here a bit more hands rising up for the health industry instead of, let's say, the brand, the fashion industry. Yeah, 1 second, yes?
I have a quick comment. Sorry, I need to jump here before we lose track. Your question to me sounds like we are in the late 90s and you're asking how the health industry can participate in the internet. And it's a tough question to answer from where I stand, because the metaverse is the next generation of the internet. So the health industry will use the ensemble of technologies that any industry will use. Surgeons will be able to operate or simulate an operation, a very difficult operation, or the payment system will be different. I mean, the back end for the health industry, called metaverse, will be the same across industries. Now, it is true that some industry will come closer to using those ensemble of technologies than some others. Health being a long sales cycle, there's procurement. Gaming is different, it's consumer, and 3 billion people are gamers. So that's driving the adoption.
Yes, that's a very interesting part, but also when I come back to Deeban, what he said about the consumer adoption, about gives them a new way to engage their customers, getting experience in their products and so on. So Tobias, from your point of view, when you as a VC investing in such, let's say, metaverse companies, what are the key factors for what you're looking for, where you would define then in the future as a successful product for the metaverse? Difficult question, I know, but...
No, I think it's actually a pretty good question. But before I answer the question, I'm going to give you a bit of background context of why we think the way we think. So we run a big partnership network with over 140 companies, and we try to work with them and say, okay, first of all, obviously we ask them, what do you think is going to disrupt your business in whatever years from now? Then they give different ideas, and then we ask the startups, what do you think is going to disrupt the companies, right? And they have very, very different viewpoints, obviously. Now, we invested, for example, in a company called ETF very recently, a couple months ago, and they're based out of Malaysia, and they are a metaverse infrastructure business, right? So for us as an investor, it's easier to invest in an infrastructure than in a single metaverse, right? Because it's a different risk-reward profile. At the same day, they are working with global brands. They're working with, for example, Google, Microsoft, Apple, and many others. And what they're doing effectively, and it kind of brings me to your brand point, is they are first trying out the metaverse internally, right? So they're launching, something for their employees, for a wellness program internally and things like this, and then they try it out. And there's all public listed companies. They're not going to go in tomorrow and be like, let's do a metaverse out there, and then it gets not the positive attention and tanks their stock price, right? So they're all very, very careful how they approach that, and typically it's internal first, or they do like POCs with some startups, or the investment arm, for example, work very close with H&M Ventures and many others who are investing in metaverses, not necessarily directly from a strategic reason, but more like from an exploration perspective, right? Like, let's see how it goes, let's see what it does, let's see how we can integrate that before they actually make a public bet and say, oh, we go all in metaverse, and now you have a complete online experience. Now, if we take that back from an investment point of view, we obviously see a lot of different metaverses, right? Across many, many different areas, from hiking to play, to gaming, to wellness, to sports, for sleeping. I've seen a lot of different things in the space. And I don't think that necessarily we're going to have hundreds or 50 or 200 different metaverses live, because people are necessarily not going to jump from 50 different metaverses. And I don't think that they're going to be completely interoperable for, in a very, very near future. So for us, obviously, if you invest in a metaverse, it needs to be broad, right? It needs to be either extremely niche or very, very broad, right? Because if it's extremely niche, I can justify, okay, that's something what like a diamond industry could use, or the fashion industry could use, purely them, so that they have an easier go-to-market and have easier time for POCs. Or invest in something extremely broad, for example, what Sandbox and Decentraland are doing, where like you can say, okay, no matter who wants to use it, I'll open up my doors for everyone. Now, obviously, as an early stage VC, we invest in pre-seed, seed stage companies. The founders make a very important piece of the whole puzzle, right? Because I think the best progress of investing in a company, or like the best, sort of approach of investing in a company is progress over time, right? So can someone execute? Because the metaverse idea is basically all the same in every single pitch deck I see, right? They all build a platform and then they use some buzzwords, and then effectively like they're gonna funnel some customers through either influencers or social media campaigns in there, or they go to B2B round and try to approach larger corporations and then get the brand value and then go and take it from there. But at the end of the day, it's very, very sort of paved way in terms of how they think. But a lot of founders, especially when they come from a very strong product background or from a very strong brand background, they understand that it's not just that, right? The brands want something more. They want something interesting, typically tailor-made. That's where the whole white label for our metaverses became interesting for us to look at as well. But to be honest, as a startup, and come back to your question, it's really the infrastructure piece right now on the metaverse side. And then selectively, we might take a bet here and there of like, okay, we really like this technology, or they're extremely immersive, where they look for, we backed a company, RD-Land, a couple months ago, or actually a year ago, and they're really playing around with being a very extreme niche metaverse, similar to like a Burning Man, where you have complete self-expression. They work with feel and touch, like haptic technologies in that sense, which is something which no one really does before, right? So like we always look at from either that tech niche perspective or from a very broad perspective, or what I more prefer is investing in the infrastructure, because if I can get brands to use that infrastructure to build their metaverse, then it's easier for me to like justify the risk-reward profile from an investment perspective in that early stage of a metaverse.
Okay, thank you very much. So